an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering the Red Rising Saga, Book 3, Morning Star, Chapters 1, 2, and 3, plus, of course, the prologue. In these chapters, we find out what's going on with Darrow, and, man, like, it's a combination of, like, not as bad as I was worried and also worse than. I don't know what to feel anymore. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thank you very much to Ashley for commissioning this episode. What's up, Ashley? If you're out there, appreciate you. You guys, you all were there for the previous episode where I tried to guess where we were going to wind up. And I was like, are we immediately going to jump into some kind of rescue? Are we going to see him getting tortured? And it's like kind of a combo. It's interesting because like the rhythm of the last book, we start with him kind of on top of the world, and then by episode 3 he's being disowned and has literally been pissed on. So here we start off with him as bad as it's gonna get, asterisk, and then by the end of the 3rd episode, he is finding some salvation. It was a really, even though I know that he is going to get out of it because there are more books, unless this is another author who enjoys killing his mains, but I didn't get that feeling. I was still surprised by the rescue and when it happened. And I also was really intrigued by the fact that in the audiobook, the narrator plays these new arrivals with American accents, which I thought was really, really interesting. Like, they're from Earth. And so what I'm kind of getting is like, is everybody on Earth? Or instead of countries having accents, people's, like, planets have accents, which I have already been told, but it failed to really hit for me the same way until this one, because this is my accent. So it's just, it matters more because it has to do with me, and I am uncomfortable when we are not about me. Okay, so let's start with the prologue. He wakes up literally where we left off, which was, I had said that was a possibility, but I really didn't think it was going to go that way. It kind of doesn't really go this way because even though it starts like this, it's the prologue, and then after this, we jump ahead a great distance in time. And he has been like gripped up by the jackal, who puts a mask over him so that he can't see or speak. And he's thinking to himself, there's still hope in those living in Severo, in Ragnar and Dancer. I think of all my people bound in darkness, of all the colors on all the worlds, shackled and chained so that gold might rule. And I feel the rage burn across the dark hollow he has carved in my soul. I am not alone. I am not his victim, so let him do his worst. I am the reaper. I know how to suffer. I know the darkness. This is not how it ends. And I hope I'm not alone in hearing, I was born in the darkness. Like, that was just immediately what came to mind. I'm not trying to cast any shade, but it was impossible not to have that thought. So then we go to chapter 1, and this is really remarkable because he is in dark, and he is cuffed with his hands behind his back, naked, in this like cold cell, in a hunch that keeps his legs from straightening, his spine from straightening. All of him is just like curled and atrophied. And for him, he is believing that this is all taking place in like the pits of the dungeons at the, he's thinking of himself in hell. So when he eventually finds out that he is in a marble box within inches of people dining and having conversations, his whole mind is blown. And I really, really loved that reveal, that it seems like he has been put somewhere out of the way to be kind of forgotten about. What's the name of the French oubliette? And instead, he's been kept somewhere that he is under direct observation, but his prison is, which was really, like, considering that I was sort of expecting there to be a rescue attempt, I feel like there's almost more of a loss of faith in the rescue when you find out how in the center of everything he has been. There's a sense of distance if he's in a prison cell far away that's probably being overseen by servants and not directly by the jackal himself. And there's a sort of like, oh, maybe we can get to him there, which is kind of what winds up happening. But knowing that he has been in one of the most high traffic areas, and just if there had been anybody trying to rescue him, would they have ever guessed where he was? Would they have figured it out? Because it doesn't seem like the jackal's allies even knew where he was being kept based on the reaction they have. So we have this interesting sort of like, almost the entire first chapter is him alone in the dark, starting to lose his mind, which this is something that I find so fascinating, but also really, it's like a sort of, what's the word they call it? Morbid fascination. The things that happen to people when they are in solitary, like, it's a documented thing, the kind of damage that being alone in this way does. And I really worry, especially because of the physical confines, that this is going to result in some pretty intense PTSD for our friend Darrow. Like, think about the ways in which he has made his assaults in various places and how often that has relied on climbing into a suit and having your movement restricted and being sent out into space. And like, is he gonna ever be able to do that again after this? I wouldn't be surprised if it took a long time to get past this. I just don't see how. It's 9 months that he's been in there. Symbolism, by the way. But I don't see how this doesn't have a profound effect on the way that you see getting into a spaceship, going into even like a bathroom stall, you know? So just from that perspective, I am not excited about this. But then the actual like physical loneliness of being away from people for this long, that he begins to imagine conversations and voices. And what he finds out later is that these voices were real. But in here, he isn't aware there are people close by. So he thinks that this is all his mind. Also close, yet 1,000 kilometers away, as if a whole world just existed beyond the darkness, and I cannot see it, cannot touch it, taste it, feel it, or pierce that veil to belong to the world once again, which is literally what's happening. But he thinks that this is just his mind doing this. So we have this like really interesting internal argument about Odysseus. He was a hero. He broke the walls of Troy. And then, no, I snap, quiet. Men entered Troy, found mothers, found children. Guess what they did? Shut up. You know what they did. Bone, sweat, flesh, ash, weeping, blood. The darkness cackles with glee. Reaper, reaper, reaper. All deeds that last are painted in blood. Which, that is a really grim sentence, but I don't know if that's untrue. For better or worse. You know what I mean? I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and thinking about the ways in which people make a mark on the world, and how we tend to think of folks as being aspirational, who have a huge outsized effect, and whose name becomes widely known, and maybe who make a lot of money, accomplish something really important, are exceptional at some particular skill. And I began to think about this and realize that, like, with a few exceptions, a lot of those people had to sacrifice being able to just enjoy regular things to accomplish what they did. And we all respect deeply their legacy, or envy it even. But like, the things they had to give up on to accomplish it are some of the most fundamental parts of enjoying your life, that many of us are not only like unwilling to do that, but don't want to even admit they had to do that. We want to pretend that people can like do it all. And I just, the older I get, start to really think that's bullshit. I feel like if you want to have an outsized effect that is really like well known by lots of people, you are going to have to take that energy out of something else in your life. And are you willing to do that? Is it important enough to you to leave that kind of legacy that you're willing to sacrifice your life while you're alive in order to keep living after you're dead? I'm not sure I am. I don't think so. There was a time where I might have said different, but I'm getting older now, hopefully wiser. Cassie says, it's curious that it's only symbolism for a gold, since I think in book 1 it's mentioned only golds wait the full 9 months for birth. I don't remember that, but I believe you. But yeah, it feels much more just like the symbolism of, for us, the reader. He's being reborn. He's literally like a baby when he comes out, frail, unable to walk, it just like curled up in a sort of fetal position. This is a very like womb-like sort of, even the idea of hearing voices and feeling like there are people, but not being like, they're in utero, babies can hear music, things like that. So there's just a really close connection there with all of this. So what if Mustang knows you're here? What if she doesn't care? And why would she? You who betrayed, who lied, who used her mind, her body, her blood. What if she betrayed you? Could you love her then? What if it was her? And this whole thing, it's just like, when I was reading it, there was a part of me that kind of felt like, this is going on too long. I'm going to be honest with you guys. There was a part of this that was very compelling. And then there was a part of this that felt like, I don't know if you should open with this. I found myself really sort of impatient. I like him having these thoughts, asking himself these questions. I appreciate him having all of this time to really consider everything. But I found myself getting very restless And I was listening to the audiobook, and I was over here considering moving it to like 1.5 speed, because I started to be like, I get it. I do. And I can't remember if I did. I don't know. I might have done like 1.2. But I definitely was starting to be like, oh my God, I get it. He's like wearing away. I feel like maybe this would work better coming back to the series after a long wait for this book. I feel like it would make much more sense for me in that scenario. But coming directly from the previous book, this just feels like delay. And as if the author kind of like, I definitely get the sense that he is trying to show us how long Darrow is in there, right? Like, we are supposed to feel the passage of time. So in that sense, it works. We are supposed to feel the way his mind begins going in circles, accomplished. And so there's a part of me that is like, okay, well, he did what he set out to do. But I think what misses for me is simply the dread. I was getting bored without feeling dread anymore. And so it began to sort of lose its impact on me. And so that was like, you know, at first when I realized where he is, I'm feeling a lot of dread. As it goes on and I'm beginning to realize like, oh man, we're going to be in this for a minute. That was when I started to sort of like lose that urgent feeling. So finally, he is thinking about, say the words, you know the way. All you must say is, I am broken, and this will all end, the jackal said, long ago, before he lowered me into this hell. I will put you in a lovely estate for the rest of your days, and send you warm, beautiful pinks, and food enough to make you fatter than the Ash Lord. But your words carry a price. That price, dear Reaper, is your family. The family he seized from Lycos with his lurchers and now keeps in his prison in the bowels of his Attica fortress, never letting me see them, never letting me tell them I love them and that I'm sorry I was not strong enough to protect them. And I definitely, this moment of like reveal, there was initially I had this like, oh my God, I was worried about his family. See, and then I had the thought of like, wait, does he really have them? Because it struck me that the jackal would use those people in person to fuck with Darrow. It didn't make a lot of sense to capture them, but not let him see them when the sight of them would be much more likely to break them or break him than simply the concept. And so I started to have my suspicions here just because it felt like that wasn't the most efficient use of his family. And the jackal is going to try and get to the heart of the matter in a real way. And not, this just, it just didn't make sense to me, you know? So anyway, then there's this moment, and I really liked this, how he's thinking about how it's not selfish for me to escape. In the grand scheme of things, it is selfless. Selfless, really. Mother would beg me to make this sacrifice. Kieran would understand it. So would my sister. I can save our people. And how he just starts to like tell himself why, and then he pushes that away. And he's doing a lot of slamming his head into the stone. All men break. I did already under his torture. I told him that I was from Lycos, where he could find my family. But there is a way out to honor what I am. So that was when I started to be like, maybe he does have them. When I found out like he definitely gave up the information and knows that he did. But And just to be clear, I don't blame Darrow for that at all, because like, not only would I just immediately tell everything I knew if I were being tortured, I would tell it before I was being tortured. But also I know that they do like have chemical ways of forcing the truth out. And I lurched my head forward into the wall harder than before, not to punish, but to kill, to end myself. If there is no pleasant end to this world, then nothingness will suffice. But if there's a veil beyond this plane, I will find it. As I pull back my head to deliver one last great blow, existence groans, rumbling like an earthquake. Not the darkness, something beyond, something in the stone itself, growing louder and deeper above me, till the darkness cracks and a blazing sword of light slashes down. And it's interesting because later on, Adrius says like he could have killed himself in there and he didn't. But it seems like it wasn't until he began to start to kill himself that the lid is lifted off of this thing. So I'm wondering if Adrius is like monitoring his, what do they call that? Monitoring all of his vitals. And that when he starts to see that this guy is like about to take himself out, that he intervenes. Or it may just be, but I don't recall if he actually mentions that. But yeah, the ceiling parts, light burns my eyes. I push out my legs and gasp, nearly fainting from the pain. Joints crack, knotted tendons unspool. This, you guys, I've been having a lot of like muscle pains and joint issues lately, and a lot of it has to do with having gained weight. But when I tell you that I felt this, the agony. I mean, you guys know what it's like to just have like been seated in the same position for a couple hours and then stand. But imagine you're being forced into a position that's uncomfortable just for 5 seconds, and you're kept in that for months. Oh my God. And it turns out there's all these people around who do not know he's like right there, weren't aware, and he is realizing that there's like a table around him that everybody is gathered around. Somebody mentions the stench, somebody else says barbaric. I remember now. This is the table the jackal sat at when I visited him after recovering from the wounds incurred during the Iron Rain. Did he plan my imprisonment even then? I wore a hood when they put me in here. I thought I was in the bowels of his fortress, but no. 30 centimeters of stone separated their suppers from my hell. And he is having trouble just with the glare of the light. He knows people are watching him and that he's naked, but there's simply nothing to do to protect himself. And he's looking around and feeling like this weird conflict of like joy at being around other human beings and seeing their faces and hearing their voices, and also realizing how horrific all of these people are and what they have done to him. And he's like having a really hard time sort of getting those things to jibe with each other. And he starts crying here. And there is a woman's voice saying, "Gory hell, Augustus, was this really necessary? He smells like death." And that's Aja. And he says, "Fermented sweat and dead skin under the magnetic shackles. See the yellowish crust on his forearms? Ew. Oh, God, ew. Still, he's very much healthy and ready for your carvers, all things considered." So, finally, they approach him, double check that it's really him. And Antonia is the one who's like, "Oh yeah, you can see the red in him now," which I think is hilarious. This bitch is really trying to be like, "Oh yeah, now that this man has been tortured and kept in isolation, now you can tell he's not a gold." Girl, I got news for you about what you'd look like if this were done to you. Would we see the red in you? Come on now. Let's all be fucking for real. A part of him relished that hole. Reds long ago adapted to darkness like worms. No pride to their rusty race. He was at home down there, more than he ever was with us. Yeah, and this is when it says, now I remember hate. This is one of those moments where I realized at the same time two things. One, that it would be difficult for me to even come up with this dialogue because it feels so foul. And also that this is the way people talk about other races. Like many people who exist today and do not see those other races as really like human in any way. And it is mind-blowing every time to be reminded that this is out there because it feels so theatrical. And I know it's real and it's an extreme, but it's also the fundamental place where so many of the more benign like assumptions and stereotypes come from, that it is somehow more gross knowing how much it can be watered down to feel like it's like not that big a deal to say, but that it ultimately came from a place that sounds like that. I don't know. There's something that we'll get to a moment later with Cassius that I think speaks to that. But yeah, this is when he hears Cassius say his name, and he turns. Cassius says, "Do you recognize me?" And he says his name to Cassius. He's alive after all, Cassius says. What did you do to him? The scars? I should think it's obvious. I have unmade the Reaper. How long was he in there? So first of all, he calls himself corpse-like. Ribs erupt from skin thinner than the film atop heated milk. That's a fucking hell of a line. Like, you guys, come on. Knees jut from spindly legs. Toenails have grown long and grasping. Scars from the jackal's torture mottle my flesh. Muscle has withered. Tubes that kept me alive erupt from my belly. Black and stringy umbilical cords still anchoring me to the foot of my cell. Or floor of my cell. That is so grotesque, y'all. Oh, man. This is really rough. 3 months of interrogation, then 9 months of solitary. 3 months of interrogation, you guys. When I tell you, I could fucking never. I am a cream puff, and I am just gonna fucking cop to it. 3 hours? Still no. I could do 3 minutes. And then I'm finding a way to kill myself, and that's just it. Like, no. But yeah, 9 as is fitting. War shouldn't make us abandon metaphor. We're not savages after all, eh, Bologna? And Antonia starts sort of mocking the fact that Cassius is uncomfortable here. So Cassius begins to get a bit defensive. Pardon me if I fail to see the purpose of torturing a fallen enemy, especially if he's given all the information he has to give. The purpose? The jackal stares at him, eyes quiet as he explains. And he makes this big song and dance about how it's putting him in his place, it's punishment. And Cassius says, he made a fool of you when your father preferred a carved-up red to his blood heir. That's what this is. The petulant shame of a boy, unloved and unwanted. The jackal twitches at that. I was shook. First of all, Cassius thinks Darrow did something to the kids, which clearly the Jackal did, not Darrow. So let's wait until he finds out that. Secondly, does it take seeing him brought low in this sense to suddenly be like, maybe my vendetta against you isn't fair? Because, like, he has to be reminded by Antonia, Darrow took Julian's life, then slaughtered your family. One would wonder what your mother would think of your pity. And, I mean, his mother, you know what she would think. She would have fucking stabbed him through the heart already with her fucking steak knife, probably. Cassius calls for a blanket. And when nobody moves, he takes his own cloak and drapes it over Darrow. And we get this moment, like, because for me, I was thinking, God, that feels like kind of a big deal. But a moment later, Aja says, or Jackal says, now that my lease on the Reaper is up, do you still plan to dissect him? We do, Aja says. Shouldn't have thanked Cassius after all. His honor isn't true. It's just sanitary. Yo, talk about a fucking bar, you guys. I'm not sure I agree. Just for the record, I don't know how much Cassius has to do with him being potentially dissected. I don't know if there's anything he could have done to stop it from happening. But the his honor isn't true. It's just sanitary. There is certainly some truth in there to a point, and it's true of a lot of us. We can be very righteous when something's in our face, but if you keep it out of our face so that we don't have to think about it, we will conveniently let ourselves forget it and purposely do it. Because, I mean, there's a part of me that feels like that is also self-protection. You can't cope with knowing all of the pain and suffering going on everywhere all the time and, like, live your life. But also, there is a sense of, like, I will allow it to continue to happen as long as I am not made uncomfortable by it. And that is so cowardly and selfish and shitty. And I can't decide how much of that is what's really happening with Cassius and how much of it is him being like, I'm allied with the person who has done this to Darrow. Is this an ally I can bear to have? Is this how it's going to be? You know? Because the Jackal more than once has to mention how they're allies, as if he thinks that maybe Cassius is going to forget. And I can't help but wonder, did the Jackal think Cassius would be into this? Did he misjudge the kind of vengeance Cassius was after? Because there's a big part of me that sort of could understand how the Jackal doesn't get what makes other people tick. And if he had an enemy and someone had done this to his enemy, that he would be like, oh, nice, thanks. This is just what I wanted. And so he does this and presents Darrow to Cassius and is maybe genuinely surprised that Cassius doesn't have the reaction that he was expecting. I don't know. I really don't but it's food for thought. So they talk about the carving and just essentially the fact that he is above average in terms of carving, and that they want to find the person who originally did it, Mickey, but they think he's dead. And of course somebody points out, like, well, they may just want you to think that. But later on, when Darrow is being looked over by the yellow doctor, the doctor is just like, my God, this dude is still strong as fuck. Like, yeah, he's fucked up and he has no muscle mass and he can't, like, do shit right now. But all of his vitals are in essentially tip-top shape. Like, whoever did this did a hell of a job. And somebody says, so you think he's superior to gold? And he's very quickly like, I didn't fucking say that. Did I say that? Did anybody hear me say that? I did not, because it did not come out of my mouth. For the tapes, I did not say those words. Just wanted to be sure you heard me not say them. But I think that he was kind of thinking it. I don't know. But it's fun. I just like the idea of Darrow having, like, we know that he has proven to be more durable than the average gold. But it's one thing to, like, be told that in the moment because he didn't throw up upon landing or whatever. And it's another thing for this sort of torture to have been perpetrated on his body and an actual doctor examining him to be like, I cannot believe the shape he's in. So let's see. The Jackal mentions Tinos, and I don't remember if we know what this is, but he says Tinos is well hidden, and we've yet to capture one of their ship captains alive. But irons are in the fire, and you'll be the first to know if anything comes of them. So this is the place where they believe Mickey is hiding. And when he says, I rather think my Bone Riders would like the first crack at the Howlers. Bone Riders? Can we be fucking for real? But you did not name your guys Bone Riders. Please tell me. And I am saying this as much to the author as to the Jackal. You didn't. I am so sorry. And maybe there will eventually come a time where I can say that word without laughing. But I can't right now. And I don't know why you thought that was a badass name. I mean, there's so many other verbs you could have put after bone. And you chose rider. I mean, it's one step away from bonefucker. Like, just... Oh, you were so close to something. Why is that? That's just... It's just bad. The Howlers? I mean, come on. Amazing. It's so vague in a way. Howlers, sure. Do wolves howl? Yes. But so do many other things. And also, you could just think of it as like the action itself devoid of a specific animal. Monster-like, even. It's just got this sort of implication that's terrifying. Bone Rider? What is that doing for you? For them? What were you hoping to evoke there? I mean, you know, and it's followed after he says that my Bone Riders would like the first crack at the Howlers. I try not to stir at the mention of the name. And I honestly, for a moment, thought he was responding to the Bone Riders because it was so goofy to me that I was willing in world to believe that Darrow had a moment of like, what is he calling them? I kind of like, I'm glad that's not it, but I wouldn't have been mad if he had put that in, of Darrow just being like, even in my state, I almost laughed aloud, you know, like, oh God, I am so sorry guys, but the Jackal has been so genuinely frightening this whole time. And this is one of the first points where I've been like, oh, that is a misstep, my friend. I'm so sorry. Anyway. Oh, God. There's a clip from Brooklyn Nine-Nine that I'm going to be sharing in the No Spoilers Discord. So, finally, Aja says, we'll be departing as soon as my 13th has decamped from the Golan Basin, likely by morning. We're taking the 13th back to Luna. The rest will remain under your supervision. And he's like, really? And she says, on loan. until this rising is snuffed out. And this is when we find out that the Jackal has been up to some pretty brutal methods for getting everything under control. And because he controls the media, he has been able to keep that under wraps and has managed to paint a lot of the horrible things that have been happening. He can either cover up that they happened at all, or he can make it look like it's the Sons of Ares doing it so that the common people are on his side, which is the reality of how this works, which is why the news is so valuable as a get. And the people who own it are so incredibly dangerous. So finally, when he's like, the enmity between our houses is hard to forget, Cassius, but we must find common ground in times like these. We all have our schoolyard stories. And this, the whole, like, implication here is that he has been doing something incredibly brutal and cruel to ensure that the output of helium from Mars remains pretty constant. I think he says that it's down like 3%. But Aja mentions kill squads and liquidation protocols. She's worried the severity of your methods against the Low Reds will create a backlash. And the whole, this might be true if he didn't control things. However, it's possible that there's footage out there and that somebody can break into it somehow. So what I would like as first thing on my wish list is for his actions to get just blown up, for everybody to get to see. And his, just let's go behind the curtain on just that first and foremost. And then when they mention, what if they do find out what you're doing? His response is to abuse this poor Pink. And this is such a, what I think he's saying here is, as much as she hates me and wants me dead, she fears me so profoundly that she would never hurt me. So he gives her the gun after showing them all that her tongue has been cut out. And when he gives her the gun, he says, I took your tongue. You remember what I did to you in the library. It will happen again and again and again, which I am guessing is rape. And he tries to get her to pull it, and she just drops the gun and falls on the ground and clutches his feet. And he says, for the public, honey is always better than vinegar, but for those who want war with wrenches, with poison, with sabotage in the sewers and terror in the streets and nibble at us like cockroaches, fear is the only method. Fear and extermination. I get that you think that. And I'm not saying you're even wrong a lot of the time. But that has an expiration date. Always. And maybe you're not worried because you think that expiration date will at least be passed when you're still alive. But I don't know, sir. I don't know. Just, there's such a combination of things going on there. And one of them is just like cutting her tongue out to keep her specifically from speaking. But then there's the level of cowed that she must be because there's a scene in like The Color Purple that's really akin to this, where she is shaving Mister's neck and has a literal razor blade, and here's this horribly abusive man. And she could cut his throat at any moment, and one would think that she would, and she doesn't. And it's really tense the way that this is all done. And all I could think as a child when I saw that scene was like, what the fuck is wrong with her? And as an adult now, I get it. And this poor girl. I love the fact that I think Darrow says that she's maybe like 14 or 16. And that upon seeing her and thinking of what she's seen and gone through, my pain seems suddenly so tiny, which I appreciated. So then we go to chapter 3, Snakebite. He is getting his head shaved in preparation for all of the experimenting and dissection that is coming. The guy doing it is a gray named Danto, Danto. Feels like we've got to be making a little bit of a reference, right? A little bit. It's not Dante quite, but it's like pretty fucking close. And I love this. He taps the muzzle they strapped to my face after I tried to bite one of them. Darrow, when did you do that? Like, how recent was this? Because it feels like that must have just happened. And the fact that he's out here still trying to bite after everything that's been done to him is frankly amazing. I would be so worn down. I would be like the model prisoner. All you need to know about me is how much of a pussy I am. I am so sorry to everybody listening if you wish I had a little bit more faith in myself or pride. I have pride in certain areas. You know, I can make a real nice lemon curd. But when it comes to this sort of thing, I'm good. Physical pain? No. Thank you, but that's also why I'm not having children. So they get a power hose to wash him down, and he is just sort of overwhelmed after having been in isolation to just like deal with how much sensation is happening to him now. It's just kind of this overwhelming, you know, he's getting grabbed and slapped and yanked and pulled and pummeled with this water. And he's actually starting to cry just from the sheer overwhelm of the situation. And the way that, like, the water, oh, God, it hits me like a horse kick in the chest, tearing skin. Yeah, considering how thin he said his skin was, there was a part of me at first that was like, they're doing like a fire hose. That feels like too much. And it turns out it is indeed too much. But not enough to, like, actually be off the table. It's just too much for, like, you know, humanity, for compassion, but not too much for, like, practicality. So he finally gets locked into another spot. They had broke his nose when they put the muzzle on, so he, like, can only breathe through his mouth mostly. And this guy who's talking to him he's talking about him to one of the other Greys and just about how he looks like pathetic now. Did you ever see him in his armor and how huge he was? But, he says, bet it hurts being born twice. Gotta respect that. Pain's the universal language, ain't it, Ruster? When I don't respond, he leans forward and stomps on my bare foot with his steel-heeled boot. The big toenail splits. And Darrow says that it's not the pain that makes him cry. It's just how fucking casual this cruelty is. It doesn't mean much to him and to the man doing it. And it makes Darrow feel so small. It almost makes me miss the box, which, yikes. And they think that he was like pretending to be a gold just because he enjoyed the social position of it, which, I mean, Darrow would be the first to admit he did enjoy the social position of it. Like, that was something that he struggled with, was how much it spoke to his pride to be worshipped the way he was being. But these guys really feel like it was just everybody around him being made a fool of. And he says something like, about all of the friends who died. And he says, you'd want the same for my kids, wouldn't you? which just such an odd assumption. But of course, they wouldn't have been told about what his like ultimate goals were because they can't know that. Like, I don't know how many people are quite aware. But let's see. I'm trying to find the spot here. Oh, yeah, here it is. Go for the ears, Danto, if you want to make him yelp, one of the Greys suggests. The woman stands at the door, nutcracker jaw bobbing up and down as she gnaws on a gum bubble. Her ashen hair is shaved into a short mohawk. Voice drawling in some earthborn dialect. She leans against the metal beside a yawning male Grey with a delicate nose more like a pink's than a soldier's. You hit them with a cupped hand, you can pop the eardrum with the pressure. Thanks, Holly. Here to help. And I'm over here like, that was sort of an odd interaction. Danto cups his hand. Like this, he hits my head. A little more curve to it. The Centurion snaps his fingers. Danto, Grimace wants him in one piece. Back up and let the doc take a look. This whole interaction, I'm just sort of like, yikes. Okay. I mean, I thought that they would have been told not to hurt him like that. And then immediately somebody steps in, but then you find out who this is in a moment. So this is when the doctor chimes in and is just like, he says, it can travel. And long-term sedation got 3 weeks to Luna at this orbit. That will be fine, but I would up the dose by 10 milligrams just to be safe. It has an abnormally strong circulatory system. And he emphasizes it because when he said it the first time, Darrow repeated that. And apparently the doctor didn't expect Darrow to be able to speak at all. So he's just like, yeah, why don't we up that dosage, man? Because he should be fucking, like, immobile. And that's not happening. So I don't know what the fuck kind of metabolism he's got, but we're going to need to do a bit more than this. So the captain nods to the female, Holly. Put him to bed, then let's get the cart and roll out. Pop. The front half of the Centurion's forehead comes off. There is something about that is so funny. It's not like there's suddenly a hole in his head. It makes him sound like he's just assembled from Legos and a piece just like detached. It's just so weirdly, you know what I mean? There's something so passive about it. And then all of a sudden, all of these like people are going down, and it's the Nutcracker woman who is just hitting them in the head point blank, like just double tapping them. Like, it's wild how quickly this happens. And fucking Darrow, in true Reek-like fashion, is so certain that this is a trick. He really believes, like, they are fucking with me. This isn't real. And it's so heartbreaking because, like, there have been times where a character has been extremely resistant to what's clearly a goodwill gesture. And I have been like, you are so difficult right now. Can you just get with the program and recognize? And I didn't feel that with Darrow at all, because this dude has been put through it so bad, and I would not put it past the Jackal to fuck with him this way at all either. So all of this very much, I was like, look, I believe they're for real, but I get it, dude. I really do. So, they try to convince him, like, I think it's Trig shows him the tattoo that he has. He's got the 13 tattoo. These are Praetorians, not sons, liars, killers. I won't unlock you if you don't want me to. No, he killed the guards. He's here to help. He has to be here to help. And at first, Darrow tries to run once he's unlocked, but guess what? He is not up for it. And this is when Holly says you're going to need an oil change. So Trig comes around and he says, I've got something for you. And when Holly protests, like, we haven't got time for it, he's like, dude, look at him. He really needs this. And he gives Darrow his razor. The original one Mustang gave him. And it's been engraved with the images of his family etched in the side, the like hilt of it, I guess, just above the hilt. Io and his mother and father, and toward the tip of the blade, Liana, Lauren, and I chasing Kieran down a tunnel wearing Oktobernacht masks. It is my childhood. Whoever made this art knows me. I am so curious who this is. Like, is it going to turn out to be somebody that we know? Is it going to turn out to be somebody that has sort of studied him, but he has never actually personally met? It feels like so personal that he has to have met them. Is it his uncle? Because his uncle, like, you know, his mom basically was like, that bitch is not dead. So maybe it's him? I don't know. And this is when Holly says, Ares thought you'd prefer to see the people you love. And he's like, Ares is dead. And he keeps sort of like insisting this is a fucking trick. You're lying. And finally, Holly reaches for her data pad. And Trigg's like, that was supposed to only be for emergencies. And she's like, he doesn't even want to come with us, dude. This is a fucking emergency. Look at him. Like, what do you want to do? And then he sees the Ares mask on the screen and he says, Fitchner. And a voice says, guess again, shithead. And it's Severo. So delighted to see him. You guys, every time he is without Severo, I get so concerned. Like, every time that Severo comes back into the picture, I like immediately feel 80% better about how everything is going. Like, Severo is just so fucking clutch. And he says, it's time you come home. You got to come to me. Trust my sons. Can you do that? And at first, Darrow's like, but he's got my family. And he's like, like hell he has your fucking family. That piece of oh, no. I have them. I grabbed them from Lycos. And Darrow really starts to lose it. And that's when Severo's like, dude, you can have time to like completely lose your shit later, but you have got to listen to them and do what they say and get the fuck out of there. So fucking try and make it clean. If you can't, just, you know, escalate. Break the chains. And he says, you'll have to carry me. And this is when Holly is like, well, actually, we've got something for you that's going to really, it's going to get you moving. And so he has to like break it between his teeth. Let's see. It's going to hurt, sir, between your teeth. That's right. Trig, I forgot about that. It's like, I thought that it was a drink, but that's right. It's an injection. Fire cavorts through my veins, my heart a piston. I look down, expecting to see it galloping out of my bloody damn chest. I feel every muscle, every cell of my body exploding, pulsing with kinetic energy. I dry heave. I fall, clawing at my chest, panting, spitting bile, punching the floor. What was that? Holly tries not to laugh. Mama calls it snake bite. Only going to last 30 minutes with your metabolism. Your mama made that? Trig shrugs. We're from Earth. Which I don't know what that means. Like, does he mean like we do it different where we're from? Like, is that what that means? There's something about it that I'm like, I don't know. I feel like it's just supposed to be like, we're a lot tougher than y'all are because of where we're from. But I don't know. So that is the end of that chapter. And I am really looking forward to not only seeing him break out, but hopefully getting to see, and I don't know how this would work, but hopefully getting to see the reaction of the Jackal when he realizes that Darrow is gone. I genuinely, again, don't know how that would work, but I want to be a fly on the wall when he discovers they have gotten out. Because I'm assuming they will get out. Asterisk. I also assume that things won't go super smoothly because they just never do, but here's hoping. Oh, Ashley says, I think it's supposed to be a redneck / moonshine reference. Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's kind of funny. Well, I'm really excited for some new injection of people who have the cause. Like, I was hoping for this. I don't know how many of them are like have just been brought on because of what happened to Darrow, or maybe they were on board from the beginning and they've only just been roped into this particular mission. But I have to imagine a lot of them consider it quite an honor if they like look to him the way they do, because they call it restoring the soul to their rebellion, you know? But being chosen to go on this mission to rescue Darrow is probably a pretty big deal. And I'm also just, I really want to know what's going on with Mustang. I am hoping that she is like unaware of what's happened to him. Or if she is aware, that she assumed he was dead. Or, you know, like, what my ideal would be is that she's working with Severo. But I do not know if she has come to terms with things enough. I genuinely can't decide. Like, a year has passed. So I feel like that should be enough time for her to have sort of come around on the whole thing and made a choice. But who knows? Who knows? All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up, but thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me. Really, really enjoying this series, as you know. Looking forward to reading the next couple of chapters. Let's see how many we've got for those reading along who might be interested. 4 through 7 next time. So, all right, kids. Well, I will see you soon with chapters 4 through 7. And until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.